recording. All right, so at least in today's lesson, we will be going over the color diagram of the composition, right? For the most part, I think most of us kind of get Photoshop a little bit more now. I mean, especially since the beginning of the semester. However, still going to cover some of the basics. Obviously, kind of review what we've already learned. But I want to take it a step further because Photoshop is great with color, but it also looks too digital, right? So very often, actually, I mentioned earlier a couple weeks ago that we might actually buy some paint, get some acrylic, and test it out. Well, we don't really have the budget for that, nor the time, and it makes a lot more sense to show you how to do these things digitally as well, right? And in fact, actually, most of the stuff you see today is digital, even though it looks analog. Anyway, let's dive into it. So first things first, you're going to need to scan your compositions. Now, please don't take a picture of it like I did. That was really just kind of for the sake of time. You owe it to yourself to go to the flatbed scanner downstairs and get a nice DPI 300 image scan of your composition, whichever one that you decide to choose. After all, you don't need to make 3 models, but I couldn't stop you, right, if you did want to. So I'm going to go ahead and get that picture that I took and make it at least somewhat presentable, and make it look like a scan for today. Of course, I went ahead and took Allison's third composition, just because I saw some potential in manipulating it with some color and some color schemes. And I remember she had a very wild color scheme that was generated in our previous diagrams. Well, Mira's going to go kind of slow today, just because I'm on the school internet. We'll let that load as we refine this. So, at least in my case, this is kind of a review, or at least how you would refine a photo. So in my case, I want to get rid of everything that is not the photo. So I'm going to select the inverse, I'm going to hit erase. And I could either change it black or white, doesn't really matter. To make it make sense, I'm going to get rid of it anyway. Could also go a lot faster and just make a very large piece. And of course fill that all in. Yeah, not looking bad so far. And the reason I either use black or white is so that when I use curves and I use the white eyedropper tool, I can really get rid of any sort of the weird anomalies that are found in the shade and shadow of my picture, such as that. Voila, it looks like a scan, does it not? And it's still a little off. Since I took it with an optical lens, technically it is in perspective, even though it doesn't look like it. I'll have to unlock my layer, I'll have to do Command T to transform it. I'll have to hold Command, at least on the Mac, or I'd have to hold Control on Windows, but I could straighten these out if I really wanted to. So just keep in mind that even if you get a bad scan, there is no excuse for a nice photoshopped image. I can even take the rulers of that one and make sure that it was dialed in just perfectly. However, today I definitely wanted to talk about color. So I'm going to go ahead and crop that now that I've already used my levels and shaped it up a little bit. So in my case, I'm removing the black now. Just in case you don't have a scanner available, here's a small tutorial, at least how you could fool somebody into getting a scan, right? However, unfortunately about an image is it's not the true size that we get, right? I'd have to change the image of this and make sure that it was 11 by 17. And right now, holy crap, it's 48, it's 4 feet long, right? Because of the pixelization. So I would change it to 300, and I would actually try and get this as close as possible to an 11 by 17. Right? I can even undefine it and change this to 17. But it's going to manipulate my image a little bit. You see how it kind of like lengthened it? Yeah, for the sake of tutorial, that's not bad. However, if you didn't want to do that, you could go to Image, Canvas Size, and of course change the canvas to an 11 by 17, which it shows now because, well, I just kind of forced it to 11 by 17. Anyway. I don't think I actually covered that in the last one, so again, there's always kind of a review when it comes to these things. So colorizing it. So, I mean, this is what I meant by it's easy to colorize something, but not necessarily easy to make it look good, right? So I definitely want to talk about making it look good, or at least presentable and communicate well. And very often when it comes to colorizing digital images, we oversaturate. We put way too much color, and we put too much of that color, and it often dominates the drawing rather than look analog and be that kind of true nature. And especially this one, because there's just no way to get that same quality of stipples that, you know, Allison did by hand, right? If we zoom in, you can kind of tell, you know, it's just remarkable, right? It almost looks like something right out of nature, right? Anyway, so let's zoom out and let's get some of that nature. Let's colorize it, you know, almost like a Mondrian. You know, I imagine that we'll probably have her color scheme. Her color scheme probably had 4 or 5 different colors, and that was a reason why I said pick more than 3, because we'll be using them. But for instance, I can take the drawing itself and I can use my magic wand tool, right? I can mess with the tolerance, such as 16, and start to get some of the pieces. Now in her case, I don't have a closed object, so magic wand tool might not be the best tool. Well, it does work here, so let's go ahead and use it. Now in my case, I know that I'll have a certain amount of colors of my color scheme, so it makes a lot of sense to say color 1, you know, and be organized. Color 2. Obviously I could even name the color and be more specific towards my flower, but in my case I don't know exactly what colors that Allison used, so. But I would go with your color scheme. Obviously you don't have to stick to your color scheme. You may find something that works better, or a variation, or an interpretation or iteration of your color scheme. But yeah, you know, don't let it be random, obviously. It should come from the research. So let's take color 1, and for the lack of, well, maybe Miro's come to fruition. There it is. There it is. There's that color scheme. So in my case, I'm gonna just take a screenshot. Obviously you would have your file, so you could open it up in Photoshop and quite literally eyedrop the exact color that you wanted. So I'm gonna go ahead and open it back up in Photoshop, File, Open, and where do you go? Screenshot. Sweet. So I can take the eyedropper tool, or the letter I on the keyboard, and take those colors, right? Quite literally. Now, I don't know about you, but we definitely have to think about this a little bit. You know, what colors pop out at us? What colors do we want to sort of stick out? Do we want to recede? Obviously, darker colors are going to what? Recede or come at you? Who knows? Anybody? They're going to come at you, right? They demand your attention. There's something about that color red. That's the reason it's used for a stop sign. They didn't choose purple. You know, they don't just go random colors. It's actually law that it needs to be a certain color of crimson red so that people see it, right? In fact, another reason it's red is because, well, even if you're colorblind, you're still going to see the color red, right? And that's very important that we see the stop sign, right? Because it could cause injury, right? So there's a reason why we use color, and I was mentioning before, you know, like McDonald's. Red also makes you hungry. Yellow also makes you hungry, right? Wow, maybe our logo color should be red and yellow if we want to make people hungry and buy our food. That's good for business. The same thing could be said about a doctor's office. Have you noticed that there's always a pastel color in your children's doctor's office, or even a hospital, right? They're usually brightly colored, again, to instill patience and not fear, right? Because most of the time people in hospitals are scared, right? Anyway, color can be really impactful, but obviously in many different ways, not only in signs, but in feelings and emotions as well. So why wouldn't it affect space in that regard as well? It's going to make us look to a certain part of the composition first, maybe rather than second. So I don't know, I can use it to demand attention or distract and not give it attention as well. So in my case, I'm going to use this storm gray and brush it right in. So I'm going to hit the letter B. I'm going to make sure I'm on the color panel, and of course brush it right in. As you can see, I can I don't have to fill up the entire thing, and I can even give it sort of kind of a varying element. Now that's something I kind of just do naturally now, right? Because, you know, if I just fill this up instead of having that little bit of whiteness at the top and a little bit of darkness at the bottom, to me it starts to just always look fake, right? Especially compared to the analog drawing it comes from. So what I like to do is go to Google Images and give it a little bit of texture that I normally would find in, say, you know, a magazine or a canvas. So in my case, I'm going to go with, say, like a canvas texture. I'm also going to wait for the world's slowest internet. Maybe I'll turn off Miro, that might help. Let's go to Google Images, and let's look up maybe some sort of texture. If I wanted it to be paint or you know, I don't necessarily want it to be flowers or anything like that, but you could decide watercolor texture. And that's usually exactly what we're looking for, some sort of texture that we can start to blend in with our color. Perhaps, you know, I kind of like the watercolor. It's kind of got this fadey, it almost actually looks a lot like her flower, so it reminds me, you know. But that's pretty exactly what we need. So I can either click on it, of course, maybe it goes right to an image. These are pretty small, so I'm going to make sure that I actually open the image in a new tab. It's a little bit bigger, and drag it right into my piece. Now again, I just want to use it for the texture, so I'm going to go ahead and manipulate it, Command T, and I'm going to kind of match the darkness to what I just did. Right, so stretch it out a little bit. Doesn't necessarily need to stay in any proportion. Oh, didn't mean to make that. Oh, didn't mean to delete that either. There we go. So we'll take that piece, Command T for transform. And you know, I don't need the whole thing. I kind of just want that kind of blotchiness to it. It's really nice. So go ahead and hit enter. I'll fade it out a little bit. Right, and I just kind of want that little piece. So I can take that exact same color again, Magic Wand tool, select everything else but that piece, and inverse it. Just select the inverse. Oh, actually, I think I had it right the first time. Erase. See which one it erases. A bit better hardness. There you go. Well, what's nice is now it's not just a color, it actually has kind of a human feel to it. And of course, upon zooming out, and definitely in printing, it starts to be less saturated. Now, in the projector, it looks pretty good. Honestly, in my computer, it's still a bit too saturated. So again, the projector is not a really good visual representation. Definitely go with the video. But I would still say it's too saturated. However, this might not be my only color that I want to use, that dark purple. So I don't know, maybe I want to harmonize it with some of the other spaces. I don't know, this square is kind of calling out to me. So I'm going to go ahead and use my Magic Wand tool again. Oh, I'm in the wrong layer. So again, this is definitely why you want to also label. So these would be my lines. And I need these lines to use my Magic Wand tool so it knows where to Magic Wand them, right? So in my case, well, it got a lot of things. It got almost everything because it's not exactly closed. See what I mean? Not exactly closed. So I could fix it real quick. I don't think I've shown you guys the stamp tool yet, but it's the letter S. You're gonna hold, on Windows, you're gonna hold the Alt key. On Mac, you're gonna hold the Option key, and it's gonna ask you, what do you want to copy? So I'm gonna click because I want to copy this black line. I'm gonna make my size of my brush a little bit bigger, and as you can see, it already starts to like copy what I was doing, right? Okay, let's get that out of the way. But I'm simply just gonna complete it, and obviously get it to that boundary. Anyway, I know I make it look so easy, but stamp tool, mess around with it, it's a lot of fun. Back to my Magic Wand tool. Now we can get that square, and I can go ahead and colorize it the way that I wanted to with the brush. Maybe a little darker this time, maybe really grab somebody's attention, but again, using the same color. Go ahead and deselect, And you kind of notice the difference of that color scheme and the texture that it has, right? You guys see that? One just kind of looks digital and sort of unforgiving, where one seems to be like, wait, did you color that, or did you watercolor it? Now obviously you'd want to choose one texture. You don't want to like do a oil painting texture and an acrylic texture and a watercolor texture for like all these different things. But again, this is to enhance what we've already done, right? So obviously I'm using the color and texture in a way that heightens and not distracts from the original composition. Yeah, so maybe these little pieces, or maybe the pieces in between start to, for instance, maybe I want to highlight these little tiny pieces with a bright yellow color. That would grab somebody's attention. Sure, why not? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Magic wand tool. Oh, wrong layer. I'm going to go back to my lines. And there we go, we got that piece. I'm going to go to color 2. I don't know which color I want to use yet, but I definitely know I want that area. I think the yellow is a safe bet. Eyedropper tool, yellow. I'm going to go ahead and brush that in on my second color. Nice. Very softly grabs my attention, but at the same time heightens those little objects. Damn, the projector just, does a horrible job at showing yellow. But that's actually a good representation of the amount of saturation you want. That's going to print out really good, right? That really light color that you give it. However, I can also take the layer and even change its opacity. So say it was still too yellow. Unfortunately on the projector you can't even see it at all now. But it looks really nice on the computer. So, but again, don't take my word for it. Of course, check out the video. Well, it's starting to look pretty good. Not on a projector, of course, but here it's looking pretty good. And I can do Command D to deselect something. However, I can have color next to other colors, or even overlap color. That might be kind of interesting as well. So for instance, maybe I have certain regions that kind of do this overlapping. So for instance, I don't know, this region right here, what if that was red? I don't know, why not? Test some things out. I'm going to go back to my lines, magic wand tool. I'm going to hold shift to add to my selection. Sweet. Sweet. I'm going to go ahead and brush in another color, maybe on color 3. Got to get that new color. I think I was saying something like in the red. Oh, I don't know, pink is kind of nice. Let's go with that pink. Why not? I'm going to go ahead and brush it in on color 3. I kind of did want to overlap them, so let me try that again. I can still add to my selection. I just need to click on the layer again, go back to the wand tool, and hold shift. And I can further add to that selection. So again, back to color 3, brush, and really get all of it. And you'll see that it's actually kind of changing my bottom one to a color orange. But again, I kind of brush it in like that, kind of circle it, because after all, I don't want this to look too digital. I like the imperfection. That's what, of course, makes it human. However, as you can see, it really changes that yellow too. I don't know, let's give it some texture. I think that was my texture. Yep. I can go ahead and make another copy of that texture and just open up another one. File, open. Is that my texture? Or was that the image? No, it's probably the image. I think I just dragged it in, that's what it was. Yeah. So I'll need another one. Go ahead and transform that one. Since I have a pretty large texture of space to fill, I don't even mind that it's kind of a little off. You kind of want that, right? I don't know. Again, the more human-like qualities I can give it, the better. So I'm going to go ahead and add texture to that piece now, but I don't have to trace it or do that all over again. I already have a layer that has that. So I'm going to magic wand, make sure that I'm on that layer, and it's going to get the piece that I do need. Do we need the inverse? No, we don't need the inverse. Let's go ahead and erase. Oh, not from that layer though, from the layer that we don't need. So yeah, I got rid of everything but the parts that are in the inside. You can kind of see it's a little messy now. Again, the projector just loses the color for some reason. I don't know what it is. but it looks great actually on here. So, but yeah, definitely not bad. Now obviously I can keep going and we could really expand on this. However, I did want to mention what I was mentioning in Rhino just for everybody, and that way you have it recorded. If you don't plan to use any digital tools besides Photoshop, that's fine. Obviously for your model it is not required to use any digital tools, but you know, I'm thinking about Jackie, I'm thinking about Angelica, and some of the others that mentioned they, you know, are interested in Rhino. So I do want to put that together, just in case my drawing on the board was not helpful. But while Rhino is opening, are there any questions about the Photoshop process? Pretty simple, guys, just asking for color and texture. Right, so instead of painting it quite literally, we're faking it a little bit, right? At least in terms of the quality, so that it doesn't look digital. I actually gave away too many secrets today. That's actually my secret, right? I really haven't found anybody else who does this, who just mashes the color and the texture of something to make something new, right? Very often they colorize the texture, and they have different ways of doing it, but I just simply put them over each other, right, and subtract. I think it's far simpler, and it gives you a little bit more manipulability or editability when you layer it out like that. Because obviously, you know, I could be like, well, you know, these colors aren't working out, right? And obviously, you can turn them on and off. In our case, the projector, you can't see that so much, but in the video you will. Any questions about Photoshop, guys? Nothing at all? Fair enough. Last but not least, just in case somebody wants to use it, we'll go ahead and make a new model. This is Rhinoceros. It's a three-dimensional program. It's one of the first, one of the best, in my opinion, and we use it a lot, right? In order to make models without necessarily having to pay for them. But what I wanted to mention was that we could simply say take our 11 by 17. Ooh. 11 inches, 17 inches. We could take our 11 by 17s and make something else out of them. Alright, so for instance, I can make a copy. Put that one there. Flip this one on its y-axis. Go ahead and move it and click it onto that one. So simply what I was saying is, well, I could use one in plan view, right, this piece, and I can use one in a section view or elevation view and simply let them tie together. So for instance, let's say there's a circle on this one, or a point, and on this one there's, I don't know, another circle. That one could arguably go, well, what if I did this and lofted them? Is that not a 2D to 3D transformation? Yeah, it is. However, to ask you to do this by hand, analog, and in your own head is near impossible. Right. So obviously if this doesn't pertain to you, you don't want to use digital technology for this project, that's absolutely fine. However, you're open to interpret, you know, the drawings as you like, right? I just want to throw it out there because some of you guys might realize, man, I can't even come up with a lot of volume. I just have planes, I just have shapes. You know, I don't really have a lot of space or volume yet. So again, you could loft circles, you could loft geometry to, of course, obtain some enclosure, if you will, right? As you guys can kind of see that you can see inside of this volume. You can almost even picture yourself inside this volume. Again, another reason why technology like this is interesting. How interesting it might be if the sunlight came through this very window in, say, a library. And now I can do it and see it before I even build it. So again, obviously useful in terms of architecture. Anyway, just wanted to show that just in case, any of you that even have one of my copies of Rhino, and you can use it to the best of your ability. You can unroll it and laser cut it, for those of you, of course, who know how to do that. So you can either build your model by analog, which I think a majority of us will do, and of course are encouraged. However, if you do have the tools, why not? Practice them and use them. So I don't want to limit you there.
Would you accept the digital payment?
No, it needs to be physical, but it can be digitally made. Right. Good, great question. I don't want to see a print of a 3D model. I want the 3D. Yeah, absolutely. Great questions. Any others, guys, before we end the recording? Somebody might have the exact same one. There's no such thing as dumb questions. Did you get a haircut there? That's good.
This model is in the form of a sculpture, not a building.
It's not a building. It's a sculpture. Absolutely. And great point to reiterate. I want you to be the artist this weekend. Take what you made artistically, even though it derived from science, sculpt it. What does it look like? There's honestly not a wrong answer here. The wrong answer would be like, where did it come from? And it didn't come from the diagram. That would be the wrong answer. But you should have plenty of geometric information to be sculpting with.
And the way you do the base, do you want like the special base?
So, another great question. And let me go ahead and end the recording, just because you won't be able to see any of this or hear me from over there anyway.